You know, 37 years ago, God spoke to me. He said, Gary, I want you to go to Uganda with your wife, Marilyn, and your children. I want you to plant an English-speaking church downtown in Kampala, the capital city of Uganda. And through that church, I'm going to touch the city. I'm going to touch the nation. And I believe that it was God's response to the cry that was coming from a broken nation, from a hurting people. Uganda had been through civil war. Oh, almost 1 million people had died in 10 years of brutal conflict. They were broken, they were hurting, and they were crying out to God. And whenever someone cries out, God always hears and he always responds. And what does he do? He sends someone to be his hand to touch a hurting world. So we came to Uganda, and we were able to start Watoto Church downtown. It's a wonderful thing, 37 years later, to have 14 different campuses across the city and across the nation, to see tens of thousands of people coming and worshiping and celebrating Jesus. And almost every week somebody stops me and says, Pastor Gary, thank you for coming. And because you came, you touched my life. Jesus touched my life, and my life is different. While we were in the middle of all of this, God spoke to me one day. He said, Gary, I want you to look after my children. I knew exactly what he meant, because Uganda had been hit by a bomb called HIV/AIDS. And there were so many people that were beginning to die. And there were thousands and thousands and thousands of little boys and girls whose moms and dads died, and they were shuffled off to an uncle or to an auntie or to a grandparent, many of them who didn't want them. And they couldn't go to school, and they didn't have proper food. And they would go to bed at night, and bed was just a dirt floor with a mat, maybe with cockroaches running around, and little boys and little girls would lie on that mat and they would cry out, "Oh God, why me?" And every time they cried, God heard their cry and he responded. How did he respond? By saying to me, Gary, look after my children. I said, God, I don't want to look after children. I want to pastor this great church. I want to preach. Kids pee in their pants and they flatulate. And I want to preach. And then Jesus said something to me. He said, I didn't send you to Uganda to do what you want. I sent you to Uganda to do what I want. Look after my children. He didn't say the children. He said my children. I knew what he meant. He wanted me to look after the orphan children that had been left all alone because of HIV/AIDS. I was in the home of an old grandmother who was 76 years of age. She had had 7 boys of her own children. They were all dead now except for one. She had 26 of her own grandchildren that she was now caring for. And I remember visiting her in her little village hut, and the tears ran down her cheeks as she said, I'm old and I'm tired and I don't know what's going to happen to my children. I said, it's going to be all right. God cares about your children. We will do what we can. But I said, oh God, this is too much for me. I said, I don't really want to do this. You know what he did? He took me back to the Bible and he began to show me how much he loves hurting people. He took me to the Old Testament where it says, extol him that rides on the heavens by his name, Yah. We used to sing a song about that. But you know what the next verse says? The father of the fatherless and the defender of the widow is he in his holy dwelling place. He sets the lonely in families. And God said to me, Gary, you can't separate who I am in heaven in all of my glory and majesty from who I am for a snotty-nosed, bloated-bellied, fly-in-the-eye little kid that's been dumped in a ditch. I'm the God of heaven. I'm the God of the ditch. Look after my children. And then he said, he sets the lonely in families. He said, I don't want you to build a big institutional orphanage. I want you to build little family dwellings where you can find a vulnerable woman who's struggling and you can train her and give her some of these children and build beautiful little homes. And so that's what we began to do. We began to gather the children, and we began to build little communities with single family dwellings. And today we have reached over 5,000 little boys and girls, and we've given them school, and we've given them food, and we've given them education, and we've given them, most of all, hope for a future that's bright. We reached out and we embraced them, and by reaching out and touching them, we were the hand of Jesus extended to a hurting world, changing hurting lives.